For 1,000 years, the sword had never moved. It stood inside a tall crystal pillar at the center of the Hall of Ancestors, deep beneath the alien capital world of Kerith. The hall was older than most cities in the galaxy. Its walls were carved with stories of ancient wars, forgotten heroes, and alliances that time had tried to erase. Every child of Kerith was brought. Here once in their life, they were told the same story. This sword saved our people. This sword ended the First Galactic War. This sword belonged to the Starbreaker, but no one truly believed it anymore. To most, the blade was only a relic, silent, dark, and lifeless. Priests prayed before it. Warriors bowed to it. Scholars argued about its origin. Yet through centuries of ritual and hope, the sword never answered until Lyra was standing at the edge of the hall, her hands shaking slightly. She was small compared to the armored guards and tall elders surrounding her. Her blue skin was pale with fear, and her eyes reflected the crystal pillar like a trapped star. She did not belong here. She was not born of warriors or nobles. Her mother was a healer. Her father, a translator who worked with off-world species. Lyra had grown up hearing strange languages, especially human, ones long after most of Kerith had stopped speaking them. Yet the trial stones had chosen her. No one could explain why. The elders whispered among themselves as Lyra stepped forward. Their robes brushed the floor, heavy with tradition and doubt. "She is too weak," one murmured. "She has no battle training," said another. "But the trials never lie," the High Elder replied. Quietly, the hall fell silent. Lyra stood before the crystal pillar. Up close, the sword looked different than she expected. It was not beautiful. It was not glowing. It was scarred. The blade was dark metal, chipped along its edge, marked by countless battles. The hilt was wrapped in worn material that looked almost human-made. Her chest tightened for reasons she could not explain. "Place your hand upon the crystal," the High Elder commanded. Lyra swallowed. Her legs felt heavy as she raised her trembling hand. The air around the pillar felt warm, like it was breathing. Her heart pounded loudly in her ears. "Nothing will happen," she told herself. "It never does." Her palm touched the crystal for a single breath. The world held still. Then the hall shook. A deep, low sound filled the air, not a roar. Not a scream, but something like a heartbeat waking from a long sleep. The carvings on the walls began to glow faintly, as if remembering themselves. Lyra gasped and tried to pull her hand back, but she couldn't. Images flooded her mind, stars burning, ships exploding, alien warriors fighting and falling, and humans standing in impossible odds. Humans bleeding, shouting, laughing through pain. Humans holding the line while others escaped. Humans refusing to run. Tears streamed down Lyra's face. She had never seen humans before, but she felt them, fear and courage bound together. The crystal cracked. Gasps echoed through the hall. Slowly, gently, the crystal shattered into light. Dissolving like mist, the sword lifted into the air on its own, hovering before Lyra, as if recognizing her. The elders fell to their knees. The blade vibrated. Then a voice spoke, not loud, not angry, but ancient and tired, spoken in perfect human language. After 1,000 years, Lyra collapsed to the floor, sobbing. The sword lowered, its tip pointing toward her. "Who calls for us now?" The silent relic had awakened, and the galaxy was about to remember why humans were never forgotten. The hall did not move. No one breathed. The elders, the guards, the priest, every soul in the hall of ancestors remained frozen as the ancient sword hovered above the shattered crystal. Soft light reflected off its scarred blade, not bright, not violent, but alive. Loracle lay on the cold stone floor, her chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. Her ears rang. Her head felt full, as if memories that did not belong to her were fighting for space inside her. Mind, she slowly pushed herself up on trembling arms. The sword turned. Not randomly, it turned toward her. The High Elder found his voice at last. It shook with disbelief. Sacred relic, do you recognize this bearer? For a long moment, the sword did not answer. Then the air vibrated again. I recognize fear. The voice said calmly. I recognize courage behind it. Lyra's eyes widened. The voice was not cruel. It was not commanding. It sounded tired, like a soldier who had waited too long for the war to end. I didn't mean to wake you, Lyra whispered. Her voice echoed softly in the vast hall. I didn't know I could. The sword lowered until it hovered at her eye level. You did not wake me, it replied. You remembered us. Confusion spread across the elders' faces. Remembered. One demanded. She is barely grown. She knows nothing of ancient wars. The sword's presence grew heavier. That is why she was chosen. Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest, mixed with pain. More images pressed against her mind. She saw herself not as she was, but standing among humans in old armor, hearing their laughter before battle, their quiet prayers before impossible odds. She grabbed her head and cried out. The sword reacted instantly, pulling back, its hum softening. Easy, it said gently. I will not break you as the war broke them. The High Elder stepped forward carefully. You speak of humans as allies. Our records say they vanished after the war. A deep sadness flowed from the blade. They did not vanish, it answered. They endured. The sword drifted toward the center of the hall, projecting images into the air holograms of memory. Everyone watched in silence as scenes unfolded. Human ships, small and damaged, shielding alien worlds. Human soldiers standing in broken lines, holding enemies back while evacuation ships escaped. Humans falling again, and again yet, never stepping aside. Lyra felt her heart ache. They were weaker. The sword continued, short-lived, fragile, and yet they stood when stronger species fled. One elder whispered, "Why?" The sword paused, "Because someone had to." Lyra slowly stood, wiping tears from her face. Her fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Understanding. "Why me?" she asked softly. The sword turned toward her once more. "Because you listened," it said. "Your people forgot them. You did not." Silence filled the hall again, but this time it was heavy with truth. The High Elder lowered his head. "What do you want from us, Ancient One?" The blade hovered for a moment, as if considering the question. Then its voice hardened. "I want you to prepare." A murmur rippled through the hall. Prepare for what? The High Elder asked. The sword's hum deepened, vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. "For war," it said. "The same enemy has returned." Lyra felt cold spread through her spine. The sword drifted closer to her hand, not touching, but waiting. And this time, it continued quietly. I will not fight without a heart to guide me. The galaxy was changing, and a gentle alien girl had just become the voice of a forgotten humanity. The calm of the Hall of Ancestors shattered with the first warning. Outside Karith's atmosphere, dark shadows moved through the stars. Hundreds of enemy ships from the Void Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace, ships the size of mountains, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities, hung over the planet like storm clouds. Their engines burned red against the blackness of space. Karith's sky shimmered with alarm signals. The elders hurried through the hall, whispering commands, their voices trembling. Alert the defense fleets. Warn the colonies. Yet even their bravest warriors could not hide their fear. The Void Dominion had not been seen for decades. To face them now was almost certain death. Laracle stood frozen near the floating sword. Her small frame shook. The hum of the blade filled her ears like a drumbeat, calling her forward. The sword pulsed softly in the air, as if alive, waiting. It was alive. It had spoken. It had chosen her. And now the galaxy demanded action. I can't fight, she whispered, voice barely audible. I'm just a girl. I'm not a warrior. The sword's light brightened. Its voice resonated gently inside her mind. Neither were the humans. Neither were the ones who stood before me 1,000 years ago. Yet they chose to fight. You are no different. The words filled her with a strange courage, one she did not recognize as her own. The memories the sword had shown her, the humans standing firm against impossible odds, stirred something in her chest. She remembered the laughter, the sacrifice, the courage in fragile bodies refusing to bow. The elders gathered around her, their faces pale. The sword, it calls only you, the High Elder said. We cannot guide it. Only your will can awaken its power. She shook her head. I don't even know how to wield it. I'll die, then fight to protect, not to survive, the sword replied. The voice was calm, yet powerful, and somehow it seemed to embrace her fear instead of crushing it. Do this, and you will awaken the courage within you. The same courage your ancestors did not know they had, the same courage humans had 1,000 years ago. The first Void Dominion scouts entered Karith's orbit. Explosions lit the atmosphere as orbital defense cannons fired, but the fleet pressed forward, relentless. The alien warriors of Karith, brave as they were, could barely slow the enemy tide. Lyra felt panic rise, but she gripped the sword's hilt as it floated before her. Her hands were trembling, her heart pounding. Still, she listened. The sword's presence calmed her, guided her, and showed her a path forward. She was not alone. The sword remembered humanity. Humanity had endured. Humanity had fought when it seemed impossible. And now she would fight too. The elders looked at her in awe and fear. The blade has chosen her, one whispered. It will not respond to anyone else. If she fails, his voice trailed off, unspoken doom hanging in the air. Lyra swallowed hard. She did not want this responsibility. She had never trained in war. She had never held a weapon of power before. She had only known books, words, and her father's stories of humans. And yet, here she was. The fate of her world, then perhaps countless. Others rested on her. The first strike of the Void Dominion fleet hit the outer colonies. Firestorms erupted. Signals of surrender and evacuation filled the communication channels. Karith was running out of time. Lyra felt the sword's warmth in the air, almost like a heartbeat against her cheek. Do not run, it said. Do not hide. Stand. Protect. Tears rolled down her face. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to hide. But deep inside, a spark ignited. A spark of courage. The sword had awakened. She knew she could not turn away. She straightened her back. She looked toward the battlefield, toward the enemy fleet, and toward the destruction looming over her world. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Then I will stand." The sword hovered closer, as if approving. Light shimmered along its edge. It waited for her to make the first move, and for the first time, Laracle did not feel afraid. She felt chosen. She felt powerful, not because she was strong, but because she was determined. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, the echoes of humanity stirred. Their legacy, carried in memory and in courage, flowed through her. And now Kareth would see what a single soul, guided by the will of the past, could do. The coming war was not just against the Void Dominion. It was against fear itself. And Laracle, small and fragile though she seemed, was ready to face it. The sword's hum grew louder. The stars outside the hall glimmered like eyes watching, and the first moment of legend began. The battlefield of Karath stretched before Laracle like a living nightmare. Smoke curled from the burning cities. Craters scarred the ground where enemy war machines had struck. Screams of wounded civilians and the clashing of alien weaponry filled the air. The sky burned red, reflecting the fire and chaos below. Lyra's small figure stood on a ridge overlooking the chaos. In her hands floated the sword, responding to her will even though she did not fully understand it. She had never held a weapon in her life, had never trained for war. Yet somehow this sword, ancient and powerful, recognized her as its bearer. She could feel it guiding her movements, almost like it knew exactly where danger would strike. The first Void Dominion walker lumbered forward, taller than the buildings of Kareth. Its steel legs crushed anything in its path. Soldiers scattered. Blasters fired. Explosions shook the ground. Lyra's hands shook violently. She swallowed fear like poison, gripping the sword's hilt with all her strength. "I can't do this," she whispered. Her voice was small, almost drowned out by the roar of the battlefield. "I'm not strong enough. I'm not a warrior." The sword hummed, vibrating through her arms. Its voice was calm but firm. "You do not need to be strong. You need only to stand, protect. That is enough." Her legs trembled, but she lifted the sword. Light spilled from its edge, soft at first, then growing brighter. When the walker reached her line of sight, she swung, not with practiced skill, not with perfect aim, but with something far stronger intention. The sword responded. It pulsed with power, as if awakening from centuries of slumber. When it cut through the air, the walker's legs snapped in an instant. Sparks flew. Metal twisted. Soldiers nearby gasped in awe. The impossible had happened. Lyra stumbled backward, her body trembling with fear and exhilaration. The sword floated beside her, ready for the next strike. And then more walkers approached, and she realized she could feel every movement before it came. She could sense danger. She could protect. The alien soldiers around her looked on with disbelief. A girl, barely grown, held a sword older than the city. She moved with a strange grace, guided by the will of something far greater than herself. With every strike, the sword unleashed a power no one had seen in 1,000 years. Tanks fell, enemy soldiers fled, and the tide of destruction paused, just for her. Yet each movement drained her. Each swing pulled at her body and mind. Sweat ran down her face. Her muscles screamed. She had never known exhaustion like this. And the sword did not care. It demanded not just action, but resolve. The same resolve humans had shown so long ago. She fell to her knees after the first wave of attacks. Her hands were raw, her arms shaking. She pressed the sword to her chest, tears blurring her vision. I can't do it anymore, she whispered, voice cracking. The sword pulsed warmly, almost like a heartbeat. Do not fight to win, it said. Fight to protect. Protect those who cannot stand. Protect those who fear. That is your power. Lyra blinked, swallowing the fear choking her throat. Images flashed in her mind. Humans standing shoulder to shoulder, holding the line despite impossible odds. Humans who had fought not for glory, not for honor, but simply because someone had to. She felt a strange strength rise inside her, not in her muscles, but in her heart. She stood again, body trembling but eyes determined. Soldiers ran to her side, inspired by her courage, by the sword that seemed alive. Together, they faced the next wave of the Dominion walkers. Lyra did not swing wildly. She did not panic. She moved with purpose. Every strike protected someone. Every block shielded someone. The battlefield fell into a tense rhythm. Lyra, the fragile alien girl, became the center of it all. And the sword, the relic of a 1,000-year-old legend, danced in her hands, not as a weapon of war, but as a guardian. For the first time, the defenders of Karith felt hope. And for the first time, Lyra felt that she might survive the impossible not alone, but guided by courage, older than memory, and a power that remembered humanity. The war had come to Karith, and in the heart of a fragile girl, a new force had awakened. The battlefield burned around Lyracle. Smoke choked the sky, and the distant cries of soldiers echoed like ghosts through the charred air. The Void Dominion's machines moved relentlessly, crushing everything in their path. Cities fell. Fields of fire stretched for miles. It was chaos beyond imagining. And in the middle of it all, Lyra stood, gripping the ancient sword that floated effortlessly before her. Every strike of the blade carried unimaginable power. A single swing could destroy an enemy walker, a group of soldiers, even an entire squad of the Dominion's shock troops. Yet each strike pulled at her soul as much as it did her body. She felt exhaustion in every muscle, but also a weight she could not explain, a strange ache in her chest, a whisper in her mind. The price is resolve, the sword said softly. The same price humans paid. Lyra faltered. I don't understand, she whispered. I'm not human. I can't. The sword pulsed, a light flowing through her veins. It is not blood or strength alone. It is choice. To stand when fear would take you. To protect when the world tells you to flee. That is the price. Images flooded her mind again, humans long dead, charging into impossible odds. Their faces were twisted in pain, but also in determination. They bled, they fell, they screamed, but they never surrendered. They had faced death, not for glory, but because someone had to. Lyracle gasped and pressed the sword to her chest. Her tears burned her cheeks. She had never known the weight of history so closely, of sacrifice so real, so vivid. She had never imagined that courage could feel like fire flowing through her bones, nor that she could feel the echo of human souls calling through her. The Dominion forces approached again, faster this time. The sky was black with their ships, and their walkers had grown larger, stronger. Her friends, the alien soldiers, looked to her, hope shining in their eyes. If she faltered now, everything would be lost. She raised the sword. It glowed faintly, as if sensing her hesitation. "Protect," it whispered. "Protect, not to win, but because they cannot protect themselves." The first walker fell instantly, sliced in two by the blade. The second collapsed beneath a shockwave of energy that radiated from it. Soldiers cheered, some in disbelief. But Lyra felt no triumph, only the ache of responsibility. Every strike took more than energy. It took her fear, her doubt, her very self. She stumbled backward, clutching the sword. Her hands were raw. Her arms shook violently. But in the tremor, she heard the echo again. Laughter and cries of humans from 1,000 years ago. They had paid this price, and somehow, through the sword, they were teaching her how to endure. The battlefield seemed to pause around her, the chaos slowing for a moment. The sword pulsed, almost warmly, reminding her that she was not alone. "You are the heart," it said. "I am the blade. Together we endure." With that, Lyracle stepped forward again. She did not swing wildly. She did not panic. She moved deliberately, each strike precise, each motion guided by something older than herself. She protected soldiers trapped beneath collapsing debris, civilians running from burning streets, and even injured enemies caught in the chaos. Every action carried the weight of life, and every strike was a choice to protect rather than destroy. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to stretch and compress as she fought. Exhaustion threatened to swallow her. Her body screamed. Her vision blurred. And yet she stood. She fought. She endured. The alien soldiers, inspired, rallied around her. The sword's energy radiated through them, strengthening their resolve. Even as the Void Dominion pressed harder, the defenders of Kereth held the line. And in that moment, Lyra understood what the sword meant. The true power of the blade was not its destruction. It was the courage it demanded, the price it asked, the willingness to stand for others when it would be easier to flee. Lyra fell to her knees again, sweat and blood mixing on her skin. Her chest heaved. Her arms trembled, but her eyes burned with determination. She had paid the price the sword demanded. She had remembered humanity, and in doing so, she had awakened the courage within herself. The battle raged on around her, but Lyracle, fragile as she seemed, had become something else entirely. She was no longer just a girl. She was the heart of the fight, the protector, and the sword, ancient and powerful, moved as one with her, ready to face whatever darkness came next. The war raged on. But the impossible had begun. Lyracle, small and fragile as she seemed, had become the axis around which hope turned. The sword floated beside her like a living thing, its dark metal glowing faintly with memories of courage and sacrifice. Every strike was precise, every movement guided not just by skill, but by intention. And yet she could feel the exhaustion creeping into her bones, the weight of the world pressing on her shoulders. Explosions rocked the battlefield. Walkers fell, but more came. The Dominion ships above rained fire down on the cities, their weapons tearing through stone and steel. Civilians ran in panic, soldiers shouted orders, and everywhere was chaos. Lyra's breaths came fast and shallow, her limbs trembling from fatigue, but still she stood. The sword pulsed, reminding her that fear was not enough to stop her. Courage could be learned. Humanity had taught it. Then a signal cut through the chaos, a frequency she recognized instantly, though she had never heard it before. It was human. Real humans. Ships, battered but alive, broke through the Dominion blockade. They were old, scarred, slow-moving, but they had come. Loracle's heart leaped in a way she had never felt before. The sword hummed, a deep, steady vibration of recognition. They remembered, it said softly. They kept their promise. From orbit, the human ships fired at the Dominion fleet. Precision strikes tore through enemy vessels, crippling their coordination. Soldiers on the ground stopped in awe as ships descended, projecting hope across the battlefield. Lyra watched as the humans moved, a fragile but unyielding force. She could feel their courage, echoing the memories the sword had shown her, connecting the past to the present. The Dominion flagship roared as it fell, struck by a human missile guided through impossible odds. Loracle raised the sword, and this time she did not hesitate. She ran toward the enemy, every swing protecting the humans and Caratha's own soldiers alike. The sword responded, almost singing, as if acknowledging allies it had waited 1,000 years to see again. A human commander appeared on the comm channels, voice trembling but strong. We thought the blade was lost, but it's alive, and its bearer. She carries our courage. Tears ran down Lyra's cheeks. She had fought, yes, but this was bigger than her. This was history. This was memory made flesh. The humans had survived, and their legacy now flowed through her, through the sword, through the defenders of Kerith. The Dominion forces faltered. Their momentum, once unstoppable, slowed. They had faced humans before, but never like this, never guided by courage that refused to die. Lyra swung the sword, and each enemy machine that fell seemed to bow to the memory it carried. Every victory, small or large, reminded her of the humans she had never met, yet somehow knew. Hours passed, and the sky cleared as the last Dominion ships fled. Smoke and fire still scarred the land, but the battle was won. Alien soldiers cheered, civilians sobbed with relief, and Lyra collapsed to her knees, the sword lowering gently to hover beside her. She could barely breathe. Her body ached. Her hands bled. But in her chest, her heart raced with joy and pride she had never known. The sword spoke one final time, quiet but firm. They did not forget, and now neither have you. Remember their courage. Protect it. Carry it forward. Lyra looked at the humans landing near the battlefield. Small, fragile, scarred but alive. They were not invincible, but they were steadfast. They had come late, but they had come. And somehow, through memory and will, they had reminded the galaxy what humanity meant. The girl who had felt so powerless hours ago now stood among legends. She was the bridge between worlds, between past and present. The sword, the humans, the courage of 1,000 years, they all converged in her small, trembling hands. For the first time, she smiled through her exhaustion. She understood now. The sword had awakened not just to power, but to faith, hope, and the enduring spirit of humanity. The war was over, for now, and Loracle, guided by ancient memories and human courage, had become a living testament. Humanity was never forgotten, and neither would its courage ever fade. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke rose in gentle spirals, and the distant cries of the injured were slowly replaced by whispers of relief. Carith had survived. The Dominion fleet had been defeated or, at least, driven back. The alien soldiers who had once doubted themselves now looked to Lyracle with awe and respect. She had led them, not with experience, but with courage that no one could teach. The sword floated beside her, its dark metal scarred yet alive, humming softly. It no longer demanded. It rested, almost patiently, as if it had found what it was waiting for. The hum was gentle, like a heartbeat, steady and warm. Lyra touched the hilt and felt a strange peace for the first time since she had arrived at the Hall of Ancestors. The fear, the pain, the exhaustion, they were still there, but mingled now with pride and wonder. The human ships had landed. Soldiers stepped down onto the scorched land, their movements careful and deliberate. They were tired, wounded, and small against the vastness of Carith, but they carried the presence of something far greater than themselves. Lyra remembered the visions the sword had shown her, humans standing shoulder to shoulder, refusing to bow. And now she saw them here, living proof that courage could endure across centuries and stars. One of the human commanders approached, his eyes scanning the battlefield, and then he stopped. He looked directly at Lyra, and a smile broke across his face. "The blade chose wisely," he said. "You carried what we could not always leave behind, humanity. It remembers you." Lyra swallowed, tears stinging her eyes. She had been afraid, trembling, unsure of every step. And yet here she was. She had fought, protected, endured, and, in doing so, she had awakened a legend. The sword had not just been a weapon. It had been a teacher, a bridge to a time long gone. A reminder that courage was stronger than fear. The elders approached cautiously. Their faces were lined with relief and amazement. "The Hall of Ancestors will speak of this day for 1,000 years, the High Elder said, "but not of the sword alone. Of the bearer, the heart that guided it." Lyra looked down at the sword. The hilt fit perfectly in her hands, as if it had been waiting for her touch for centuries. "I never wanted this," she whispered softly. "I am just me." The sword pulsed gently, a light warmth that flowed through her. "It is enough to be who you are. That is how heroes are made. That is how legends live." The humans began to assist the injured, and Carith soldiers followed their lead. Together they cleared rubble, helped civilians, and tended to the wounded. Lyra watched, exhausted but alive, as the survivors found strength in each other. She realized then that the sword's power had never been in destruction, it had been in inspiring hope, protecting life, and guiding courage. For the first time, she felt the weight of history settle on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a gift. She had become part of a story greater than herself, one that stretched across species, across centuries. The memories of humans, their courage and sacrifice, had flowed through her, and now she would carry it forward. The sun began to rise over Carith, painting the sky in colors no one had named. The sword shimmered softly, reflecting the light, and Lyra stepped forward. She was no longer just a translator's daughter. She was the protector of a legacy, the keeper of courage, the living bridge between humans and aliens. Past and future, she whispered to the sword, her voice full of awe and reverence. "We will remember, always." The sword hummed one last time, quietly, almost as if acknowledging her words. The hum was not just sound, it was promise, history, and hope, all woven together. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, across time and space, the courage of humanity smiled through her small hands. The story of Lyracle, the girl who awakened the sword of Vaelrin, began that day. A legend that would be told for generations, not about power nor victory, but about courage, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit that refused to be forgotten. The galaxy would remember, humanity would remember, and now so would Kareth. The sword rested, alive but silent, and Lyra, trembling yet strong, walked forward into the dawn, ready for whatever the stars would bring next.